Let's get it started. What's up, everyone? If you didn't notice, we're in a new background right now, and I'm working through a couple of technical things, but soon enough there's a new studio that's currently under construction. And so I'm excited for everyone to see that. Probably not going to be next week, might not be the week after, but it's coming sometime. Um, and so we're doing a little bit of a different episode. I wanted to try something new this week. We we spend a lot of time here talking about like SaaS demand, and I was just thinking, I was on a podcast the other week, and I've been thinking about it because they asked me more about like the career progression and the story, and I talked through a lot of it. And having thinking about it, I thought I could communicate it again with a lot more detail and a lot more key takeaways I think people could use. And so this is going to be a little bit of a different format. I'm going to try to talk for a little bit more than I usually do, and then we're going to move to questions. Those questions can be about the things that I talk about. They can also be the stuff that we normally talk about. So feel free. But if you have questions specifically about trying to get your company started or trying to grow in your career, that's sort of like the main point of my component of the talk. So if things are brewing your mind, feel free to write them down or to drop them in the chat, and we'll get into them afterwards.
Let's do this. I'll squeeze in a few of my lessons learned too, guys. Don't worry. Yeah.
Trying to figure this out, but I can't. Okay. We're going to go through it anyway. So I'm actually when they had me start, when I was doing this podcast at like middle school, we're definitely not going to start there. So we'll start at the end of college. And so I went into college, got into a great school, mainly because of my baseball skills, not necessarily my academics, but I picked up my academics throughout school. And I graduated with electrical computer engineering and biomedical engineering. When I went in there, I was thinking that I wanted to design medical devices. That's what I thought. And so I had several different offers coming out of school, some that were like more like pure engineering type of stuff. And then I got one offer that was a little bit unique that I thought was cool from this company called Halma, which was a rotational graduate development program where you intentionally rotate. They had 60 subsidiaries around the world that had different technology and engineering solutions that I'll talk through. And you would rotate around those companies doing different functions as a goal. Like GE has a program like this. I think a lot of larger companies have a program like this to try and like develop well-rounded skills across a business. And so that was exciting to me. It was also exciting that I'd be able to like move around and do cool stuff. And so early on, I picked up on that role. So I started as a engineer, a software engineer in Pittsburgh at a company called BEA. They make, if you walk into a Walmart and the door opens automatically, that's what they do. And they do it for a lot of different things, public transportation and all those different things. And so I was writing software they had me come in for the project to evaluate a new application of their like sensor technology for something. And I was like basically trying to code this thing so that when you like in a middle school, if you put a water bottle here, the water bottle would fill up and then you could move forward, and using a different type of technology than what's being used today. And so I was building that. I was working with our largest customer that was going to place a large order. And I was basically responsible for writing the software, figuring out what customers need, and then deciding whether or not we should actually go through with the development of the product. Some of the things that I learned there that was interesting, that company had a global manufacturing space. And so they had a manufacturing facility that they owned in China. They sourced a lot of electronic components there. And I was fascinated at that time that they could manufacture this like entire sensor for like $5 that you would put, and then these companies would sell them for like hundreds of dollars and 80, 90+% gross margins, which is very unique for hardware businesses. And one of the things that I figured out there was I went out and started talking to customers, and this is going to be a consistent theme throughout my entire talk here. I think it's one of the core pillars of what makes me able to do marketing very well. I just feel very connected to the customers that I'm serving or going after, or however you want to put it. And so I developed the sensor. The software was okay. It was probably not very good. It probably had a ton of bugs. They probably threw it out when I left. But the core is that they had me in a boardroom making a decision about whether or not they were going to invest like $2.5 million in order to commercialize this product. And my recommendation was that they shouldn't do it, and because there was a limited application, they weren't going to make a very large order, and I honestly didn't think that it was a big enough market opportunity for them to do it. And I was fascinated that after they wanted to do it, they brought me in, and I said not to do it, and I explained my reasons why. I was fascinated that people listened to me. It was really cool. At 22, literally years old, telling them that they shouldn't make this investment in this product, and they listened. So that was great. I had a lot of good takeaways there, and now we'll keep going through the progression. So the next place they moved me was into California at this company. They manufactured water quality sensors, and they brought me in to try and understand whether or not to sense the quality issue in this glass they were using as a defect, to sense defects before they shipped the things out. And I got into this company, and it was a 9-month project they had. And within 30 seconds, I was like, this is impossible. And the impact of doing this project is like zero. These things cost us like 5 cents to make. Who cares if a couple of them are thrown out as scrap? And then I went and I started to look like inside of the company, assess quantitative data, look at different things, understand the products that they sell, talk to customers. And I found what I thought was the biggest opportunity inside of that company, taking some of the things that I learned from the previous company, which was that they were taking manufacturing in China, building supply chain over there, and bringing it in here. This company was doing everything in Los Angeles, paying 3 to 5 times more than they need to. I started sourcing the most expensive components in China, reduced the cost of goods sold on that product by 66%, a high volume product, and dramatically increased the gross margin of the company in a very short period of time. And it was just very interesting that for whatever reason, nobody else saw that opportunity. And that's another theme that I want to kind of communicate here, is that throughout my career, it's been fascinating to me how many opportunities are in every single company to make major impacts that might be slightly outside of your core job responsibility, that are potentially career changing opportunities for you. Whether it's a career changing opportunity because you make a huge impact and then that changes the trajectory, or because you learn something that then in a couple of years you use in a different way. And so I figured out the supply chain thing. I reduced the cost of goods sold on that product, and then I started looking across the assembly line. We're manufacturing hundreds of thousands of these things. And so I'm looking across the assembly line and optimizing different processes inside of that system. If a person doesn't need to go and move this direction and it can save us 5 seconds, we can make 100 more parts in that day. And so I was looking at that, and that was an interesting component, because that same concept of just process optimization is the exact same thing I do when I work with companies trying to optimize their revenue system. It's very clear there are things that are coming in, you're doing a lot of different processes to them, sales, and then you're getting something out, customers. And so consistent process, optimization of certain process. I talked so much about the lead handoff optimization and about how much of an impact it would make for companies if they optimize that part of the process for inbound leads to move them into a process in the way that they want. And still to this day, I'm sure people that buy software know, most companies still don't do it. It's crazy that there's nobody focused on customer-centric process optimization or buyer experience optimization inside of that system. And so during that time as well, I started a side business. So I was working my full-time job, and then I took some of the things that I had learned in these places about strategically sourcing things overseas, and I started to buy speakers and headphones private labeled on Alibaba through a manufacturer in China. I private labeled, rebranded them, built a brand around it, built a Shopify store, took $3,000, which was a lot of money for me at that point, took $3,000 and bought, I think it was like 200, 150 units, brought them in, wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sell them, started to figure out how to sell things on Amazon, started to run Facebook ads in like 2000, I think this is 2013 at this point, run Facebook ads, figure out how that was starting to work. But the core of this specific company was that I really figured out how to run Amazon search ads. And so 95% of, 5% of the revenue came from our website, which is mainly driven on SEO, and 95% was driven on SEO or SEM inside of the Amazon ecosystem. I was very good at that, especially, and when you're buying ads on Amazon, people have heard me talk about this before, when you're buying ads on Amazon for broad match terms, and you can see really clearly that you just spent $1,000 and got no customers, it makes you think about what type of keywords that you bid on and how you look at things when you start running it in a B2B SaaS model, or any model for that matter. Just using your own money to go and figure those things out, you feel it differently. And so I learned a lot of those lessons early on. None of them were like, didn't lose a ton of money, right? Like the company ended up making money and different things like that. And one of I'm just going to kind of like be open about a couple of these things. The company was doing quite well. I think within like 9 months, we had done almost $250,000 in revenue. I was sourcing, continuing to buy more inventory, adding new products, continuing mainly to sell them through Amazon. There were days as a 23-year-old where we did $35,000 in revenue. Like it was some crazy stuff. And I made some mistakes during that time as well. I was not smart about cash flow. I got to a place where I was spending money on other things, like going out to fancy dinners or buying a new car. And when I needed to go and put $90,000 down to go and get more inventory, I didn't have the money and the company failed. And that was a core learning for me. I want to share that with people. I haven't really talked much about that, but that's a learning, a mistake that I learned a lot from, that I don't make that mistake again. And so that was an interesting one. Let's see, what do I have here? Yep. So then I moved to two other companies on the East Coast, one in Cleveland, which was a product management role. I had never done product management before, but the company had a new product that they wanted to that was in development already, and they wanted to figure out how to move it from like middle of development into a launch. And so that was my job. One of the things that I've gotten quite good at, and I think a lot of people could learn from this as well, is that before I got there, I had read three product management books, took a branding and marketing class on Wharton, did a couple of other core things. And I'd gotten to that company at 24 and I knew more about product management than anyone that was there. And so there's like a ton of, if you want to learn stuff, there's a ton of information out there where if you just go and get it and retain it and consume it and then go and apply it, then you can build massive advantage. It's not like you're competing with other people, but you can build massive advantages relative to other people. And so that core, what I learned in this specific one was the value of differentiation and targeting. And so really figuring out, I went out to conferences. They thought that we were going to sell this to optometrists and ophthalmologists. And I went out and I talked to optometrists and ophthalmologists and understood how different they were and how they made money and what was important to them and what patients they treated, and realized that it was actually optometrists. And then from optometrists, what are they actually going to use it for? This is something that some people call it the wedge strategy. Other people call it like a leading pin strategy. It's figuring out what is the absolute exact application for a very specific user that they need to use your product, and messaging specifically on that. And I found what it was. It was that those types of people make a lot of money from contact lens fitting, that they eventually sell contact lenses. And right now, a lot of people don't do it in a way that's very efficient. And this thing would just take a picture and measure your eye and go and do it. So I figured out the application. And then I went and talked to a bunch of people and figured out what the value proposition was and figured out how to message it. And then we eventually launched that product. And then I almost did the exact same thing with a blood pressure product in the next one as a product management role. And so the core learning there, I think, is assessing the market and looking at it in a different way versus just people telling you what they think inside of your company. Every company that I've gone into, the first thing that I do is I listen to a lot of people that know things, because you're going to learn a bunch of stuff. You're going to learn a bunch of stuff. And then I assess quantitative business data, and then I go and talk to customers. And if you're able to go and talk to customers and be curious and segment appropriately and listen and learn, you're going to learn so many things that nobody else in the company knows. I know that for sure. It's crazy, but I know that for sure. And then you can figure out specific things about how you're going to message or how you're going to target or different things like that. That's pure strategy. That's what I do right now. People think that I'm a marketer. I am a business strategist that recognizes that marketing is the best way to get things done today. That's really what it is. But like, the strategy comes through. You can see inside of our company how narrow we are in who we're going after, how our content is produced relative to that audience, how much we're building our products specifically around that audience, because we could have a marketing firm for everybody. We could do B2B, we could do B2C. It'd be fun to do like direct to consumer, e-com, performance marketing. We could do all of those things, but the value of being way more narrow long-term is so much greater. And so that was a key learning there. A couple ones for people just to reiterate on the specific application or use case that people cannot live without, and message specifically around that, the wedge strategy, and just ultimately figuring out, like, being very narrow on segmentation and targeting. I actually returned. So I returned back to California. I liked working for the company, but I also really loved living in California. And so that was my first full-time. So I graduated this 2-year program. That was all in a 2-year span that I just laid out. Graduated this 2-year program, and then took a full-time role with this company in marketing. And so in this role, the thing that I was looking at, I looked at the business from an operational COGS, P&L standpoint when I was there last, and I was looking at it more of a commercialization selling perspective. And so I was understanding the channel. A lot of these companies that sell hardware, it's very common. You're going to sell through a distribution model, especially if your company was started, has been around for a while. You have an established distribution model, because in 1995, those types of companies didn't want to pay for sales reps or couldn't afford to do it. So they sold through a distribution partner that would sell their part for them and take a margin. A lot of those companies still exist today. The same thing would be if you're this juice, you sell through a distributor called Whole Foods, and Whole Foods takes a percentage of the margin in that case. And this is, at this point now, probably 2015. And just like, I don't know, nobody taught me this stuff, but just intuitively, I was like, the future of this business is building a brand and going direct to consumer, like not selling a part that you can ship for $3 through a distributor and paying them $40 to sit in the middle and do almost nothing. And so at that company, I developed the brand, which they didn't have. They sold mainly private label or OEM into different companies under their brands, the exact same part that they would sell. And so we took it, built a brand around it, created a website. This is where I started to learn a lot of SEO and e-com. And so did a lot of SEO, had a lot of success with it. It was very easy to rank for some of these like sensor terms because nobody else was doing it. And so had some success figuring out that, and also like started to drive quite a bit of revenue for that company. I say some of these things, and I think a lot of people, I think it's nice to have like this forum to do a backstory here, because I don't think a lot of people recognize when I talk about not doing certain things like SEO or email nurtures or different things like that. All this stuff I've done myself. I dominated SEO from 2012, 2013 to 2015. I loved it. and over time have just figured out that there are new, better ways to communicate with customers to drive your business instead of those things. The main reason is because less people are doing them and buyers move, and other companies don't realize that buyers are now getting information in different places. And so anyway, that was a nice little project there. And then the companies that I worked for and all that different story that I just told, those companies were pumped to grow net profit by 12% year over year. And some of that stuff just didn't get me excited. As I was developing in my career, some of that stuff just didn't get me excited anymore. And so I was looking to make a move to a company that was more high growth. And so I joined my first venture funded company called Vapotherm. They hired me as a marketing manager at that point. They had just, I think when I joined them, had just raised a Series D and were about $25, $27 million in revenue. And they sold a physical hardware product that was a breathing device that was a capital purchase for like $5,000 a unit that would be sold in volumes, and then a consumable that every patient that you treated would be like a recurring revenue model, but just not on a monthly basis, just as much as it was used. So your recurring revenue model was based on product adoption and usage. If the people bought the units and didn't use the product on patients, then we weren't going to make a recurring revenue stream. And that's where all the gross margin was in the company. And so it's like, the way that I looked at this is that it's incredibly similar to SaaS. Potentially higher cost of switching, requires onboarding and product adoption and customer success in order to use the product, in order to expand and buy future units that drive more disposables in a recurring revenue model. And so when I got into this company, again, the process is exactly the same. People can definitely use this. Talk to all the people in the company and collect all the knowledge and what people are thinking, what they're seeing, and different things like that. And then assess quantitatively the business data. And so I was inside of the same thing that I do for companies today, I was doing at this company. Just their Salesforce instance was nowhere near as clean, right? And so I'm inside of Salesforce. I'm looking at how long sales cycles are. I'm looking at win rates. I'm looking at how much, at that point, I didn't know what customer acquisition cost was, but I'm looking at different metrics like that. And then I actually went out, like I'm doing a talk on Friday. I'll maybe drop the link on field marketing, because I've done field marketing before. This is what I did. I went out in the field with our 40 field sales reps, and I went to meetings and I listened to understand customers, and I tried to communicate the clinical trial data, and I tried to get them into certain accounts. Like I've done all of these different things. And when I was inside of those different sales conversations, I would just listen and observe, and you could just feel that the people that we were talking to were not interested in buying. It was just so clear that they weren't interested in buying. They took the meeting as a courtesy or to stay up to date or understand different things, but you could feel, like you actually had to be in the meeting to feel that they were interested in buying. And I'm not sure if the sales rep felt it, but I definitely felt it. And so what my job, when I got back to HQ, what my job was to figure out how do we get people to know all of these important things, so that when we're starting a sales conversation with them, they're receptive to the information the sales rep's delivering to them. How do we get them to want to have that meeting versus us asking for the meeting? And so I started to understand a lot about people. I went and talked to customers versus non-customers, and saw the huge gaps in knowledge between people that didn't use our product and the ones that did. And then my job was to figure out, okay, how do I get that information to people in an effective way so that they understand these things? And when they understand these things, they're going to be more receptive to sales messaging. They're going to be more likely to consider our product. They're going to be more likely to ask somebody else at a different facility whether or not they use it, and all those different components. And so that's sort of like within 3 months, right? Like the company hired me to do sales. And goes back to the same thing I said. They hired me to do sales enablement and do webinars and sales training and go to occasional big meetings and understand clinical data. And within 3 months, I had completely changed what I was going to do at that company, because I thought like a CEO. And if I was the CEO of that company, I would figure out how to do marketing to have more buyers want to buy our stuff in a way more efficient way than salespeople driving 4 hours across the state to have a meeting for someone that doesn't want to buy right now. And so that's what I did. And at this one, if you can imagine that this company didn't even know what marketing automation was, I was able, and I was lucky. A lot of people were interested in growth. They gave me a lot of opportunities. I learned a ton of stuff. I built this entire thing by myself. I remember being up at 2 a.m. with HubSpot support, trying to figure out a use case that they've never tried before inside of their product, and then figuring out how to do it. And so I, established HubSpot, built out email nurture flows, did a lot of things exactly by the book, ran gated content targeted at Facebook, on Facebook ads to the people at Facebook. At that time, you could get to exactly who you wanted to. And so I was running gated ebooks. They went through nurtures, did the whole, jam that everyone talks about doing, that companies still do today, 5 years later. And I measured it over time. And out of all of the people that downloaded that ebook, that all the money that we spent on it, we got one customer for like 25K ARR. And my assessment of that was that this is not worth our time. And so I started to change my approach in what I was doing. And I didn't gate content. I put things out ungated, because I started to realize if people just had the information, then they would be able to learn and see. And here's where it starts to get interesting. I started to run, I had built direct access to a large scale of potential buyers through Facebook and Instagram ads. This is a long time ago. You could do the exact same thing on LinkedIn. Some people could still do it on Facebook ads. And I was spending money to run ads to these people, to deliver clinical trial information or updates about our products or different things like that. And 50 to 100 buyers would comment on it. And they would say, I don't understand this, or they would present an objection, or they would ask this question, or they would do this. And if there was ever an instance where I didn't know the answer, or I didn't have a piece of content, I went and made it. And then I commented, and I put them back, and I sent them to a link somewhere. And I started to move people, basically while salespeople are going out and going to meetings with people that don't want to buy, I'm doing basically digital selling. I'm giving people information. They're asking questions. I'm answering them with content from people that are, clinicians that work inside of our company, so that they can understand more about the clinical information. And I'm, building the email list, sending out emails with these types of things. And all of a sudden, it wasn't like one pop and it happened, but more and more people started to come to our website and ask to buy stuff. And it was like, and then this is when I started to understand pipeline optimization and really start to look at this data. Because when people came to our website and said, hey, I'd love to talk to your sales rep about buying this stuff, I knew that the CEO at this company was through and through a sales executive. And so the only thing that he was going to care about is pipeline and revenue. And so I was making sure that all those deals were tagged, that the sources were right, that I'm going to track them through the pipeline, that I'm going to report on pipeline on a weekly basis, that I'm going to report on revenue when it happens. And so I started to do that. And what I found, like the first deal, our sales cycle at that time was like 212 days. And the first deal that closed was in 42. And our win rate at that time was like 13% across all sources. And marketing sourced qualified deals won at like 40%. And I just started to look at this, and I was like, this could be so much more efficient if we started just investing more money in marketing in order to drive the efficiency and the productivity on the sales side. Our sales team is 60, 70% of the sales team is struggling to exceed or hit quota right now. And the reason is because we're going to market like it's 1995. And so that progression continued to happen. I spent so much time, and I literally still do it right now. It's just in a different channel. I spent so much time in comments with emergency physicians, with ER nurses, with respiratory therapists on Facebook. And now I do the exact same thing on LinkedIn, and it really works. I get way more insights every day about marketers by spending time in the comments of LinkedIn than the people that write these massive reports with survey data. There's more qualitative, real insights every day inside of social than reports, in my view. And then when we were trying to start to scale it out, this is a point where I'm clearly seeing it working. The executive team is, I don't think they really understood how much of an impact it was having. And I'm not really sure that at that point I was able to communicate it effectively, right? I'm much more able to communicate those things now, but this is 5 years ago. And so I needed to figure out, like, how am I going to get these people to really, really understand how important this is? And so I went and did a survey. This is another good thing. If you want to demonstrate something about your customers to an executive team that you've already seen qualitatively and is true, you just need a large scale data set to support it, then you should do a survey and just prove that thing out if you really need to. And so I did a survey specifically around how these people bought things. And the things that I learned inside of that survey, I still use today, because people are, it's evolved more, but people in 2017 still wanted to buy the same way, and it's different than how most companies are selling. And so some of the things that we asked, what's the first thing that you do when you're researching a medical technology? And they said that I go online, and then the next thing was I ask a colleague at another facility. And another question that we asked is, when do you want to talk to a sales rep inside of your process? And by far, like 85% of the answer says, when I ask for a demo, or when I want a demo. And the key is that when they wanted it, not when we wanted to show them the product. And then I had some other questions about, where do you learn about this type of technology? And social media was off the charts in this one. It was medical journals, conferences, social media. And so that's something that we were using as an insight as well. It was interesting that LinkedIn was not really high on this one. It was YouTube, Facebook, and then LinkedIn at that time. It might have changed since then. And so I used all of those insights to show the company that this is something that we need to do. And then we started to really scale up. And then we went from spending, $10,000 a month on Facebook ads to $75,000 a month. And I got to see the challenges that happen when you scale out, that the creative and content requirements get way higher because you're spending way more money to a defined audience that other people don't understand. Other people think that it's like Google, where you just press a button and put a different amount and you can just spend as much. Social doesn't work that way. And so there's a lot of companies that scale up their Facebook or LinkedIn ads and spend too much money to a place where it's completely diminishing returns. And the answer is, you need more content in order to keep scaling up. And so I built that entire system. That was the foundation for what we do at my company today. We've continued to iterate and evolve on it. And inside of that company, I have a really interesting note for people. People are so caught up in this attribution thing. This is at this point, a $35 million business, high growth company. And there's a team underneath me now of like three, 4 people. And I'm executing the entire demand system and pulling all the levers. And I don't need attribution. It was very clear. It was 100% clear what was happening throughout the entire process. Spend more on Facebook ads. And then all of a sudden, more people come through attributed by HubSpot in organic search, because I don't know how this is so complicated to people. People saw the ads and then they didn't click on them. And then they went to Google and they searched for the brand and they asked for a demo. And I'm so confused why people need attribution on that. It's just like so obvious. And so I could see those different things. And then when you slow down the Facebook ads, the exact same thing happened. Less people ask for them. Less people ask for demos when you stop spending as much. And so those different things became very clear. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get to all the good stuff for people. So that was a really nice run. I'm like, that's probably like the turning point in my that 2 years was the turning point in my career. I had a lot of different skills and I found the place that's the right vehicle in order to use them. And so that's a takeaway for people as well. If you're a marketer and you're in the wrong vehicle, it's gonna slow down your career. And so you need to figure out, what are the things that matter. The things that mattered to me was high growth and experienced, competent leadership. And I think that's what a lot of people should be looking for right now. But when you start to look at, like, am I not getting where I want to go because of me, or am I not getting where I want to go because of the vehicle that I'm in? You need to make an honest assessment with yourself about which one that is, if you're not getting to where you want to go. Because if it's either one, if you recognize it and know, you can either change your behavior or you can change your environment. And so that's something that's an interesting takeaway that I found. And then I moved to that company IPO'd. I moved to one more company for a short period of time to lead their marketing department. And this is where I started to really understand the early stage world of venture funded, software and tech companies. And this is where I learned, and I got into this company and I had all of this core business strategy, product strategy, differentiation, customer research, comms and demand generation, talent. And I get in there, and within 2 weeks, they send me on the lead gen hamster wheel. And they just say, we need a bunch of leads. And it didn't take me more than 5 days to get them 500 leads and watch none of them close. And so it's people think that lead gen or performance marketing is difficult. It's super easy. It's super easy to go and collect email addresses and get people that your sales team calls that don't buy, which is essentially what it is in sales led. And so I was on the hamster wheel for 2 or 3 months. We eventually, I don't even think the company realized it. I eventually realized that this is clearly not the right path. And I went and talked to and I decided I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to go and start talking to customers. And I went and talked to customers. And what I realized is that we were completely targeting a industry segment that didn't want to buy our stuff, that didn't have a pain point that our product solved. Nothing. All it took me was 2 visits to these different facilities to see how they were using our product, or if they wanted to realize that none of them wanted our stuff. And then all I did is I looked, and then I went to a different segment where we had a lot of happy customers that was smaller in total addressable market, and saw how much those people wanted our product. And if that company had segmented appropriately and chosen a narrow target and built their messaging and their product around that, they would be a lot more successful. But companies, especially early stage venture funded companies, do not make that choice because it lowers their TAM and it makes it more difficult to raise money at a high valuation, which is completely misaligned with building a successful business. It's so fascinating. And so I got to experience the idea with a CEO who doesn't understand marketing, who only listens to the head of sales, and the head of sales that has no idea how to do marketing, but thinks that they do, and drives you to do a lead gen model that doesn't work with ridiculous customer acquisition cost and super low efficiency outbound. And at that point, I looked around in the world. It was clearly not going to be there for a long time. I looked out into the world and realized that a ton of companies were doing this. Like it wasn't just this company. It was a lot of companies that were operating with this model that I knew was less effective than the one I already built. And so I went on a little mission to respectfully parted ways with that company, and then started out as a consultant and built the organization that we have right now. And a lot of people have heard the story from, when I started building this company to where we are right now. And a lot of the things that people like in 2017, people told me that running Facebook ads to physicians was dumb. In 2019, people told me that making content for LinkedIn would never work to grow my company, that I should hire a sales team. And so there's just clear points in my career where people told me certain things and I had enough intuition to sort of move. And I think that's another thing too, in believing in the things that you see and trying to align yourself with people that believe in those same things. And I think I'll close out here for a second. I just want to reflect on the idea that I've been an employee at several companies trying to build what I do right now for my company, and they didn't let me. I cannot believe that. And then I was thinking about how many marketers have incredible ideas that they want to go and execute on that get suppressed inside of companies because of politics or organization or dumb excuses or attribution or whatever. And I think that if there's executives and other people listening to that, CEOs or of early stage companies, CMOs of later stage companies, like there are probably a lot of amazing ideas that never actually get moved into production inside of your company solely because it gets suppressed, just like several of my ideas have at other companies. And so I just encourage people to think about that. And I think that's about it. Like there was another e-commerce stint that I built a majority with Instagram organic, selling blankets, and did probably 100K in revenue solely by posting content every day on Instagram and engaging in comments and building relationships with people. And so that was the prerequisite in 2018, 19 to what I do in LinkedIn right now. It taught those types of skills. It taught me that I need to make content every day, that I need to reply to as many comments as possible, that I need to, when people comment on stuff from what I post, I start to get to know them. I start to build relationships with them, that I need to produce things that people find valuable, that want to pay attention, that engagement based on the right people matters. Like there's so many details inside of marketing that I think a lot of people that aren't in it don't have enough of respect for. And I think we'll close there. I don't know.
If we were in like a, audience stadium, you would be getting a round of applause right now, Chris. Round of applause.
Wow.
Well done. What a narrative. People loved this segment. A lot of great feedback.
Cool. Yeah.
In comments.
I was interested in the feedback because we can definitely work on some other things, but that was essentially the journey. And I guess one more takeaway for people is the idea that there were certain skills that I built in 2013, in 2015 that I didn't use for it's not that I didn't use them, that I like reopened for myself in 2021. And so I think that people think about, both people and companies think about needing to do something and get a direct benefit out of it right now. But it's really strange how different learnings compound and come together in a way when you need them. And so I think there's just a core takeaway of seeking out opportunities. There's opportunities everywhere. And, I believe that one of the core reasons that I've been able to do the things that I've been able to do, which are great up to this point, is that I am always focused on the customer and I'm always focused on learning. I'm looking for opportunities to learn. And so those are another couple of takeaways for people.
Love it. We've got a batch of questions that came in as you were talking.
I love that
Are great. Yeah. So I think we should jump into those next. Mostly related to what you talked, but cover a few different areas. I think it'll be a nice mix to get into it.
Cool.
Charlie, I love you. You can come on first.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, nice mic. Good to see you.
Thank you. Well, I think I remember messaging you on LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, what mic you've got?" It's probably the first thing everyone asks you. Yeah, so I went and bought it. Well, okay, what's my question? Well, it goes back actually a bit to what you were talking about earlier, more on career-based stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'd been studying like a master's degree in marketing with a uni college, whatever you call it, here in the UK. And it's a part-time one, so I can pause it and restart it whenever I want. So I paused it to focus on work, but it's coming back round and I got to decide whether to restart it. Mm-hmm. I can walk with a diploma or like go back in, pay all this money, complete it, right? So I was looking back through the textbook for its upcoming module on strategic marketing for the chapter on demand gen by Chris Walker, and it's nowhere to be found. And I'm yet to encounter in the world of academic marketing any references to demand gen. So my question to you is, do you guys care? Like when you're hiring, do you care if people have marketing qualifications? Do you care if they have postgraduate qualifications? Do you select for it? You know, what's your thoughts on that?
No, like if somebody looked at me based on my like college education, they would definitely not hire me for any marketing job, right? And so, but the idea that I understand engineering and understand product and look at things that sit in a systems level and understand how to run experiments and understand deeply how to analyze data and all of those different things that engineering teaches you makes you a way better marketer, but nobody thinks like that. And so I think what's important is whether or not you can apply the knowledge, not whether or not you have a diploma from a school. And my opinion on that is different. Some people, some companies and people care about those things. But no, I'm looking at people's relevant work experience. And most importantly, when I talk to them, do they have a great attitude and do they really know what their craft? That's what I'm looking for. And Megan, maybe you have some stuff to add on that too.
For that. Yeah, I think I would agree with everything that you say. I do think that there's some level of practical experience in demand gen that we do look for our director of demand gen role.
Totally.
But when you think about it, a lot of those technical skills, whether it's in platform or analyzing data in CRM, a lot of those can be learned. And so it's those intangibles of curiosity, of, positivity, optimism, willing to tackle the hard problems. Those end up being so much more important. And for anyone that wants to learn those tactical skills, you don't need to go to college, right, to get a degree. There's so much great information out there that it can be self-taught. And you can break into a role to gain experience in a particular area if you haven't gotten it so far. So school's overrated. With all this change with the pandemic and everything, hopefully it creates a little bit of a shift in how we think about education.
Yeah, and the best way to figure out, I've mentioned this a couple of times, so I won't go too deep into it, but the best way to figure out marketing is to take a commoditized product and figure out how to sell it. And so when you have no brand and you're selling a commodity product that a ton of other vendors are out there and you're not going to win on price, how do you win? You win through marketing, awareness, relationship building, those types of things. And it was the easiest way. It's why I don't do a lot of SEO anymore. It was the easiest way for me to know, okay, I'm doing SEO and I'm doing Instagram organic and I'm running Facebook ads. And it's very clear that Instagram organic and supplemented with Facebook ads is really what's moving the needle. And so if you can know those things and you can see them, you can learn what are the skills that are in the tactics that are actually working the best. I think a lot of companies, if we get back into like high growth SaaS, I think a lot of companies struggle because they're doing a bunch of things and they don't know which ones are working and which ones aren't. And so they just keep doing a bunch of stuff. And what they don't understand is they could stop doing 70% of what they're doing and take all those resources and all that energy and do all the things that they're not doing, like a podcast and all the things that we talk about, because they're too busy with 7 people working on marketing automation and email nurtures and data stuff. Cool.
I want to bring on Christine. You submitted a great question in advance. It's great to have you on the show, Christine. Welcome.
Thank you. First time here live.
Hey, Christine. Good to have you here.
Thank you. And I want to give a shout out to my coworker, Julia, who's the one who turned me onto the podcast and who has attended a bunch.
Nice.
And I want to call her out for doing a lot of the really good things that you talk about.
Awesome. Go Julia. What's she doing?
She's organized digital events that have attracted 18,000 people because we're talking about the top level stuff. And my job actually is optimizing the handoff from marketing to sales.
Cool.
Prospect experience optimization.
I love that.
And I have a lot of thoughts if people have questions on how to go about implementing something like that. But so we do a lot of these good things. We have a very tight MQL definition, which is only people who want to talk to us are MQLs. And yet sales still wants a list of those 18,000 people who signed up for that top of funnel event. They still have to hunt, even though we're providing good qualified leads. They still have to hunt, and they want to hunt warm prospects. So I'm in the process of evaluating Sixth Sense and Demand Base. I've manually given them prospecting lists before, and I say I don't vouch for their quality. Have at it. But I'm second guessing myself with the intent strategy, the intent signal strategy.
Okay.
I want to know, what are some of the pitfalls? Am I going to cannibalize organic leads? Do I even care? I don't want to fall prey to the MarTech positioning and whatnot. So I would love your thoughts about how to evaluate something like that with a problem that I have.
So there was multiple questions in there. I'll try and get to them all. The first thing is, there's several things that I'll be clear that I don't know. I have hypotheses, but I don't know. So on the Sixth Sense side, I do have, or whatever, intent data driven to outbound vendor agnostic stuff. I do have a hypothesis that there are people that are hitting those stages that are going into an outbound motion, that are creating opportunities that are going to lose, that if they had waited 2 to 3 more weeks, they would have come inbound and they would have won. I do believe that those things are happening, purely driven on the fact that buyers buy more when they come to you versus when you go to them. Very difficult to ever prove that out. It's a complete theory, but I do believe that is happening. And it just shows in the win rates between in Sixth Sense outbound versus, high intent web form submission inbound. Like, the win rates from lead to win or from meeting to win are dramatically different. But it's almost impossible to answer that question directly. I will say, based on my experience with several companies, that using something like that is dramatically more effective than running some type of lead gen model to BDRs. Because you can focus on more valuable accounts and different things like that. I do believe that there are pitfalls. I don't understand the operational side deeply, but I understand that, like, you get account level data and then you just basically need to source contacts and then hope that those people were the right people or different things. And so I think it can, in my experience of what I found anecdotally, is that it works better than what you're doing right now in terms of, or what you've been. The alternative would be to just get a lead list to have them go. And so if there's between the two, I think that the some type of intent data provider to outbound is most likely a better motion. And then you're able to sort of like run your whole stream. Cause I get it, right? Like, if you put yourself in the sales team shoes, like, they have a quota to hit, they need people. Like, my feeling is that if they, interesting thought here that I hadn't really communicated before, is the idea that the sales reps should think about different activities. And so this is more so like, it's difficult to change in large companies, right? But the sales reps have learned that they just need leads to call. And we're seeing very successful sales reps that do things very differently, that leave thoughtful comments for people on LinkedIn, that build relationships, that go to virtual events, that end up being speakers on events, that create opportunities for themselves because people know them, right? And so it'd be not a recommendation for your company. It's more so just for people listening afterwards. But like, if you were a sales rep in that, if I was a sales rep in that position, I would do neither of these options. You know what I mean? I would do option 3, which is go out, do modern day business development on social networks by building relationships and adding value to people. But to get back to your question, yeah, I'd recommend considering a tool. But I think that, and you're gonna need close collaboration with sales on which approach is better. But honestly, like, I treat it like a coin flip.
Yeah, our sales team is pretty lean for our industry. We're in education, and the old adage is you can't sell more than 200 miles from your home. And there is some truth to that. Schools are spending taxpayer dollars. There's a major consideration, and it's very cyclical. Only happens very specific times of year. But where we differ from our competitive set is we don't have a huge sales team. And so our reps are working the phones a bit more, and the marketing team does a really good job of uncovering demand and creating it. So I'm looking for any other way that we can help them pick up on that demand and make their time better without giving them a list of thousands of people without any sort of sense of hierarchy or and I also don't want to piss off our prospects.
Totally. Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I've always, as a consumer of information for the past 5 years, there's nothing that's bothered me more than downloading a piece of content or going to an event and then getting 12 cold calls from somebody. And for whatever reason, companies still don't understand or have empathy for what it's like to the buyer. Like I would never, at that point, I wouldn't put in fake information anywhere moving forward in that company. If I ever had the choice, I would never buy their stuff again. There's a company that a lot of people know. That is a data provider. I'm not going to shout them out or shit on them here, but I'm going to tell you the story that once a month, a new account executive connects with me and then automated DMs 3 or 4 times until I remove the connection, and it happens on autopilot every month. And I hate that company because it's just, imagine at scale how many buyers you're just pissing off by doing that over and over. And so those are some things that I think companies should think about more.
Thank you.
I'm interested. Megan, could you grab her name or email? I'd be interested to know what you're doing with the handoff optimization.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome first appearance on Demand Gen Live, Christine. We'll follow up later to learn more about your role. Yeah, it's a new one. I haven't heard of that like dedicated position before. It's really great that your company is investing in that. All right, Joshua, you're up next. I'm bringing you on to ask your question.
Cool, thanks. Chris, it was cool to hear your story. I really enjoyed just hearing just all the different pivots along the way. And
cool, man.
You mentioned in one section where maybe at one time you were really focused on SEO, and then later on you moved on to other techniques, and there was a lot of different examples like that. But I guess my real question is, how did you keep from getting attached to one method or technique along the way, and what that worked in one season that brought you success, that helped you win, and then not just get stuck there or stay attached to that? Like I think throughout the rest of the talk you kind of have answered it, but I just thought I would just see what your thoughts were on how do you kind of keep moving like you did.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to put it into words, but I'm going to try. Is that as a marketer, your job is to be, the customer is moving, and your job is to be moving with them, as close to with them as you can. And so if you spend enough time with customers, then you start to realize what are the things that where are they getting information? What are they doing? And you start to move into those places, right? Like I was not active on LinkedIn 3 or 4 years ago. I'm sure a lot of people on this that are listening to this podcast or on the Zoom were not active on LinkedIn 4 years ago. People have moved, right? And still, companies do not produce enough content for LinkedIn when all of their buyers are there. There is just massive B2B branding, marketing, transactions, sales happening on that platform. And a lot of companies don't even know that it's happening. It's true. They don't use it. They don't invest in it, different things like that. And so the way that I've been able to do it is, one, by following the customer, and then purely based on the results. And so the results for me come in 2 forms. It's, one, are people consuming this information and responding? And so that's what I'm looking for first. And then if that stuff starts to happen, it's only if you're communicating effectively and you have the right product and you're talking to the right people, it's only a matter of time until they start buying things. And so that's sort of one of the different angles. And then on search, the core recognition for me is that people were discovering and making purchasing decisions in different ways than they did when SEO was in its prime. When SEO was in its prime, I couldn't go on to LinkedIn and ask 20 people about which ABM software they prefer. I couldn't go into Revenue Collective. I couldn't connect with David and ask about his experience on that thing. There was no access to, there was no trust radius or those types of things. And so people had to go to Google to search for something in order to solve a problem. And now I don't wait for somebody to recognize that they have a problem and then 9 months later decide they want to solve it and search for something. I just go out and give them the information and teach them about a problem that's clearly solvable, that's going to help them do something better. And so I'm with them where they are, and as opposed to waiting for someone to search something, I'm going to go out and get them where they already are and teach them about the problem, so that they're not searching, how do I solve this? They're just coming to my website. And so those are different things that we've continued to iterate. And then I think one of the takeaways for people that I didn't cover a lot in the talk, but I want to hit on right now, is the idea of micro innovation inside of existing channels. I think that people really undervalue these different things. We make micro adjustments. Like, people are just like, oh, you run LinkedIn ads. It's like, we make micro adjustments that matter a lot over time as those things start to build up. The amount of adjustments that I made from when I first posted on LinkedIn until where we are right now, and the progression step on step about that thing. And so I think that there are a lot of marketers out there that never get deep enough into the details in any one channel to know a lot of the things that I know. And so just being very focused on trying to really understand the nuances and the details, and being like enjoying those things, I think one component that a lot of marketers could learn from. I think that a lot of people have done that in SEO. I think that way less people have done that on channels that have emerged since then.
Something that I would add, just working with Chris for the better part of a year, is, and you didn't quite touch on this, but I think it's important, and I don't think enough people pay attention to this for themselves, is following intuition and listening to strong gut instincts.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, whether it's a micro innovation or a pivot or a new idea, where as long as space can be created for some free thought, something is, there's an intuitive nature to developing that new idea. You then have to validate that with your customer. You then have to do some experimenting and testing. But I think that often it takes people a while to build up the confidence to follow their intuition and to listen to their gut. And I think more people should embrace that, because that is your compass, and that's telling you to go in a direction. It doesn't have all the answers, and that's when you need to apply these other things to really uncover exactly the direction that you're taking. But I think that actually is maybe a bigger part of your story, just as an observer.
And then now at this point, it's cool, because one of the core parts of my job is to be 5 steps ahead of the companies that pay us money, to know the next 3 or 4 steps that they haven't done yet that they should do. And so that's why we have a podcast. A lot of our customers don't. We've been doing it for a year. We know very clear how to make it successful. We've run influencer brand collaboration things. I understand how impactful they can be. We're going to measure that. And then when companies decide 3 years later, 3 years too late, that they should start adopting it, we'll know how to do it. The same thing goes for our micro events and a ton of different things that are starting to emerge. And so like, it becomes clear that there is something to do, but it's interesting now, like a core part of my job is innovation, which is, I think, a strength of mine. So that's cool. Good question. Any follow-up?
It seems like one thing I'm sort of hearing in this is kind of the fact that you're always trying to maximize your available marketing resources, let's say, and try to use everything you have, but then you're always looking at the data plus the customer, and then figuring out something that's maybe not really going on yet. And like you just said, you're thinking steps ahead, because I guess I guess part of me goes, is that because that's Chris's personality and he just is like, or is it like a discipline? How much of that's like a discipline that you push yourself to be like that versus that's just like how you tick?
Megan might be able to answer that better than me, but I think it's both. I think that there is a natural talent, but there's also natural talent is only valuable if it's applied in the right way and used with discipline. And so I think that there's a combination of both things there. Another thing that you mentioned that I thought was interesting is the idea, like, I look at very large marketing teams that don't produce the output that our 3-person marketing team does. And so it's interesting to think when you have limited resources, like I believe long-term that you should have a very core, smaller marketing team filled with experts. And at that point, you wouldn't need 50 people on your team to do each little task, because what you would recognize is that all of those little tasks are actually meaningless, that they're actually not moving the needle at all. And there's only, in most companies from a marketing perspective, there's only 1, 2, or 3 things that are really moving the needle. And a lot of them struggle to figure out exactly what those couple of things are.
And that goes back to, you're not trying to be cool. You're trying to get results. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like you mentioned, like you're always looking at the customer and the results, and that allows you to have the freedom to structure things differently. I was very lucky when I told that story, because I think there was the huge take home in the first 4 years of my career that I still use is that the only thing that matters is deeply understanding your customer. And what I've found as I've continued to move in a lot of different companies is that most companies don't take the time to do it. Thanks.
Good to see you. Good dialogue too.
All right, David, at long last, bringing you on.
Okay, hi.
Hey.
Good evening. So
Good evening.
take the conversation in a slightly different direction,
Cool.
but I think one that many of us would relate to. So I think a lot of folks here are working in technology companies. And we have relationships with sales managers when we do demand generation. And each sales manager is his or her own, personality and situation. So considering people who have demand gen roles today, if you had the choice, how would you try and structure your relationship with the sales management groups that you as a demand gen person need to interact with on a more regular basis? Perhaps it's at the director level because of what your role is, or maybe it's at the VP level because of what your role is in that company. What would be some attributes you'd like to build into that relationship so that your herd can have input towards some conversation points? And what conversations do you want to be part of, perhaps?
Yeah. So my experience in this is that at a manager or director level, the challenges that present in this situation are created far above these people and are difficult to manage. Number one is misaligned compensation and metrics. And so if this was, in my fictitious example, I would highly consider having both of those people comped and measured in the same way. So that's one thing to think about. The next thing that I would think about is I would be a lot of demand marketers get in there and have a sales manager that's not aligned with the way that I'm talking about stuff. And that's not going to work. And so if I was in charge, I would be very clear about who I'm selecting as a sales manager. Because if you think about if you're running a demand model, the way that I see it is that, sales and CSM are sort of the same role. And demand is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of educating customers, driving them in to a point where they're ready to buy. Sales is being a consultant, solutions engineer, expert, solving their problem, and then potentially even implementing it in the future. And so I think that this question is challenging because it it sits in the existing constraints of how organizations operate, and I just probably wouldn't operate if I did it that way. And so those are some of the ideas, but I would be happy to answer a follow-up, or if you want me to be specific about that exact situation, I can be.
You definitely took the question in a different direction than I was thinking, and I respect and understand why. So, you know, not to overgeneralize here, but a lot of demand gen roles are folks who are earlier on in their careers, many times, not always, clearly, but still, nevertheless. And so there's a certain power play that can exist between marketing and sales in software companies.
I've lived it. It exists in every company.
I'm trying to ask the question in an open manner.
I totally no,
Right?
I'm playing with you, but I just like I've been a marketer inside of a venture funded company where you can feel that sales is looking down on you, that like you're less important, that they're the best in the company. I understand those things. It's just
And that's so. If you're sensing that as an individual, if you were to be able to be coached for a day or 15 minutes or 5 minutes in a question, what kinds of things would you encourage that demand gen marketing person to try and foster in their relationship with sales? What kinds of things might you try and suggest that they try not to foster, or to kind of like redirect? And you've been working in an agency for a few years now, so maybe this doesn't feel quite so real, but for many other folks, perhaps.
Totally. No, I've been there, and I totally understand, and I've been in this situation where it's really good, and I've been in this situation where it's not so good, right? And so I think I have a good perspective on this in terms of, and I posted about it, I think today. The number one thing as that demand marketer is to do demand marketing well and help that sales rep get deals that they weren't going to close, that helps them hit their quota. And that's how you build alignment. And so when I've been in this situation multiple times, and earlier in my career, when I was a marketer, I focused on doing whatever sales asked. When they asked for a brochure, I built it. When they asked me to fly to San Diego to go to a meeting, when I went, and then I flew to it. And when I went there, it was totally not a, you know, the person was qualified, but they weren't interested in buying. It was a complete waste of time and money. When people wanted, like one rep was struggling in New England. And so I built the entire campaign for 3 or 4, you know, companies that are based in their New England territory. And I did basically all those different things. And then I took a step back, listened to customers, ran demand marketing, drove way more revenue for each individual rep and for the company by doing it that way. And that's what I'm trying to help a lot of marketers understand, because I think a lot of marketers are in that situation. And it might be hard, right, depending on the organization that you're in, to break away from that model. It was hard for me in 2017 to do that because there was 4 or 5 marketers like me that were doing different things like that. And I broke away, built demand function, and it took 12 months for the company to realize that it was working. And those 12 months were tough because we were measuring on revenue with a 90-day sales cycle, not leads. And so I think that the real answer is that in terms of relationship building, the way that I've been good friends with sales reps, I've built relationships with them. I like them, had a lot of fun with them. But I always felt that I got the most respect from them when I put revenue inside of that helped them hit their quota. When if they didn't get it, they wouldn't have won President's Club. If they didn't have that big deal, they wouldn't have hit quota, and they might have gone on a PIP, or they were on a PIP and I gave them a big deal that they closed before the end of the quarter. Those are the things that matter to those people. That's how you build relationships. It's purely based on adding value, is the way that I see it.
Yeah. And I would just add, like, it's, you know, most humans are selfish creatures. Like I've been in so many different power play political situations across my different career, and the method that I used every time to navigate through those effectively was gaining their trust. What motivates this person?
Exactly.
How does this person operate? What is this person afraid of? What is this person trying to achieve? How does this person like to be handled, communicated with?
Handled.
And most people are so caught up in what they're doing that nobody takes the time to really be, I use the word empathy a lot. People throw that word around, but very few people actually have true empathy and can really put themselves in someone else's shoes. And I have the ability to do that effectively. And no matter what situation I'm in, personal, professional, a power dynamic where I am not on the top of that pyramid, right? I've been able to use that to get what I want, as long as I can help other people get what they want. The more you help other people get what they want, the more you get what you want. And that it's like the universal application.
It's absolutely true. I think one thing I'd share then from my experience that, is aim to be connective tissue between sales and marketing. Understand that you're somewhat the last step in marketing and the first step in sales in some respects. Not entirely, clearly, but there's, operationally speaking, there's a bit of that. That's the handoff, right, that goes on. And care about the handoff. Try and make it easy for sales reps to find the good things that you've created. Walk around if you can, or talk to them individually where you can. Now it's easy to talk to everyone individually because we've got basically everyone's inside of a window, right? And share what you've done so that they know it's going on. Not because you're trying to pump up your chest and so forth and so on, but because they're so busy doing their thing, they may not recognize what is available and present and there. That might mean creating certain dashboards and reports, being responsive in all the ways you described about trying to go the extra mile for individuals and for teams. Absolutely. But it's a lot about communication, and being that connective tissue between product, between other marketing groups, between sales, and between your operational systems as well. It's kind of like being a bit of Gumby. You need to understand as you say, like your salespeople, enjoy their salespeople, and as you pointed out, Megan, it's about trust. If they trust that you have their interests in mind, and that you really know what they care about, and they can tell, that goes a long way. Because not everything you do will be a success, and they know how that is, because not everything they do will be a success. But they want to know that you really understand it, rather than you're phoning in the MQLs, if you will, which I don't suppose anyone here, hopes or wants to do, because they're here.
Yes.
But anyway,
the phrase that I like to use, that use connective tissue, I like to say, be the glue. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, their ego can get in the way, because when you're actually the glue in an organization, it's a very thankless position and role, because effectively you're going to do a lot of legwork behind the scenes that will get no recognition, no accolades, but that ultimately is going to get a group of people to the next place, the next milestone that they need to get to. And so all of those little actions add up, and can be really, really powerful. And what's important is if you can put your ego aside and you recognize where you're actually headed and where you need to go, and that you can move your chess pieces around and get everybody moving in the right direction, it can be very powerful. But this is another thing where ego gets in the way of people being able to be okay with being in a position like that, because it's behind the scenes, it's beneath the surface. So that's another observation that I've encountered as well.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Nice conversation, David. Always love having you on. We have two more good questions that I want to bring on.
Okay.
And I know we're doing a long one, but let's get these two in. We'll see how we're feeling.
Crazy. I talked for 45 minutes straight.
Seem like you're doing all right, though. We'll get these in.
Yeah, we got two more. Let's do it.
If I can pronounce your name right, Nishanth, I'm bringing you on. Please correct me if I mispronounced your name.
No, it was perfect. Thank you.
Hey, what's up, man?
Thank you for, bringing me on. Last time I was suddenly brought on and I stumbled, so I have it all written down now.
Cool.
Okay. So, I have about 3 years of experience in marketing, so I'm a bit of a noob. Do you think that there is a post-cookie world? And do you think there is a certain kind of skill sets that, let's say I'd love to be, like, say, director of growth at a SaaS company. So I'm currently a marketing technologist at a SaaS company.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's some certain skill sets that, would be useful, in terms of leveraging the future, the same way you started on Facebook ads early?
Mm-hmm.
And the second question is, I'm about the only person in the marketing department, and I find like I'm treading water every day, and I, get on LinkedIn and do like cold messages trying to ask for mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
Like how, and I haven't got many replies. How would you kind of handle that situation?
Cool. Yeah, let's go to the first one about skills in the cookieless world. Regardless of whether there are cookies or not, the skills needed to be successful are the same, which is marketing fundamentals. And I'm going to walk through. So marketing fundamentals across the board, biggest gap in marketers that I see: segmentation, talking to customers, understanding them deeply, messaging appropriately, understanding where they are. Like those are big things that sadly most marketers don't do. So I think that's a huge opportunity right there, with or without cookies. When you move into a cookieless world, I think that there is going to be an extreme advantage for marketers that create content that people seek out. I don't need cookies. I'm not scared about this at all, because it doesn't matter whether I don't care about tracking anyone's web activity or triggering different things or anything like that. I create things that people want. They come and get it. They're more educated. If they have a problem that I can solve, then they'll come and find me. It's like really simple. And so I think that's the actual opportunity, is being able to understand people and then be able to architect a content strategy, whether it's you, the expert, whether you're bringing together experts and being the host, whether you're just in the background operating the framework and how it works and orchestrating the strategy. Like that's a huge opportunity. Companies have content managers, which are typically, SEO writers for the most part, or other things like that. Like if you think about a really robust content strategy, like what we're running right now, like I think that is the secret weapon against the cookieless world, where you're providing value to people, where you don't need cookies. They're going to come and find it. That would be, that's one recommendation. Happy to answer a follow-up on this one if you want to go.
No, that
more.
100% makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about the mentorship question.
Yeah. So the question is, do I have any ideas about how to get a mentor?
Yeah, so I'm basically the only marketer, and my LinkedIn kind of cold messaging requests have kind of failed till now. So, how do I grow? Because I feel like I'm just, treading water day to day.
How many people have you messaged?
20. I got a couple of replies, but then I sent them a huge, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And then I kind of lost the plot because of that. I didn't really get back.
I think you know the answer here.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's the same thing for me. And I'll just kind of reiterate, because people do this to me all the time, where they like, I would love to answer their message, but they send me 19 paragraphs and I'm not going to read through it. Right? Like, and so if they had just simplified the question and asked me, I opened it, I would have answered it, but I just can't take 9 minutes to consume all the messages that I get. And so that's one thing to think about. Another thing that would be interesting to think about is to adjust your approach slightly. What your approach right now is similar to outbound sales, potentially like warm outbound or whatever. I would think about identifying the people that you're looking for. Maybe that's make a list of 10 people total or something. Follow them on LinkedIn, start engaging and building relationships, understanding them, figure out something that you can do for them in exchange for the mentorship, and then offer an exchange instead of just asking for mentorship. So an example, I'm just, throwing it out here. Let's pretend it's me, since that's the only example that I could think of right now. So like maybe you, after, going through this, you go onto our website and see that this, like the way that we do our calendar or forms or tracking or whatever your skill set is not ideal. And so you figure that out, and, we would have to go and pay, somebody would have to figure it out or different things, but you could do it in 10 minutes. And so you say, hey, notice this was going on. If you just did this, you could get, 10 more customers. You could get this, or you could do this. I'm happy to do that for you. Would you be open to chatting with me for 30 minutes about my career in exchange. I think that contextual value exchange that's truly valuable to the other person might be a good route to go to.
100% offering value before asking. I dig it.
I have a different perspective on this that I'd love to share. So I have never had a mentor. I've always struggled to get one. I have asked many of people to be my mentor. And for whatever reason, it didn't really pan out. And someone said this to me, so I'm not going to take credit for this phrase, but it completely shifted my perspective on how I think about this. So they said, everyone around you can be a mentor. Look for mentorship moments. There is not one person out there that has all of the answers. And so it's really about being open-minded, finding community of like-minded individuals, coming to something like this and bringing up a question that you're curious what people have, right? And hearing what they think about. There's a particular topic that you know you want to learn more about, do some research, get an opinion, post something on LinkedIn and see what other people have to say. So like, basically shifting your, like, I need to find this one person that's going to unlock all these answers for me, and actually just realize that there are opportunities all around you. And if you open your eyes and put your own opinions out there and hear what people are saying in response, that you can actually learn from everyone, and that you don't necessarily need to learn or be connected with someone in your functional discipline to learn important things that can be applied to what you're doing in your particular context as well. So that was a big turning point for me, where it's been a long time since I asked anyone to be my mentor. And now I just focus on learning from, I surround myself with smart, interesting, talented people, and I pay attention to the things that they do and say. And those are my mentors.
I'm giving you the clap emoji.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you so much for
first
taking
time
the time.
ever at the Wedge Live. I've given.
I know. Look at the public recognition from Chris Walker. Oh, Jess, I see you too. Oh, and I got a heart from Jess.
Thanks again for taking the time. Going back to an earlier thread, I did my master's in marketing, but I feel like I learned so much more here, with people who've been in the trenches. Thanks again.
Yeah, happy to help. It
Great to have you on.
Yes.
I really want to bring Sina on. She had a good question, and we can have some closing thoughts after this. But Sina,
actually, it's a he. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, that's awkward.
Hold on. Megan's getting the thumbs down emoji now.
My clap was so short-lived.
That's thanks. No, that's okay. It's a common mistake. But you said my name correctly, so I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. I'm actually a bit nervous asking this question, but I don't know why. I'm actually pretty new to marketing in the sense that I've been a freelance consultant for about 6 years, and then the last year I built a team of 9 people, which it took me away from the day-to-day, and now I'm finally in a place where I'm like, okay, I can put on my marketing hat. And of course I did like marketing, but it was very, paid advertising focused. I'm very data analytics mindset. And candidly, I mean, your position on attribution completely changed the game. I went to my content strategist. I'm like, we're ungating everything. We're giving everything away for free. So totally changed my mindset. But now I'm in this position where I'm like, I'm really trying to learn and as much as I can. And it's like a whole new world for me. And my question was around LinkedIn and social content. Yeah. And I understand the idea of bringing value and connecting and commenting and creating content. And I've been doing that, like what I believe are thoughtful comments on other people's posts. I've been posting my own valuable content, no pitch. And I get like, 50 people who see it and, 0 likes or 1 like, and I'm just wondering like, where's the inflection point where, you know, your content kind of goes in an upward trajectory? And what is the sort of progression that you should go about to do that? Should you start with engagement and then start doing content? Like, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, it's a solid question. And so at the beginning, the thing that you need to figure out is it the content, or is just nobody seeing it? Like, that's the first thing to think about. So when I started on LinkedIn, I had 1,000 followers that I had collected from the beginning when I got LinkedIn in like college to then. And I would post stuff and I would get 2 likes because it was a bunch of people that were engineers from 2013 that I connected with that never log into LinkedIn. So most of my followers never used the platform. And so I would get the same amount. And so when I did that, I needed to start building a network of people that were active on the platform, that were interested in the things that I was talking about, those types of things. And so having an active connection strategy, you can go out and have people that are active that might be interested in the things that you're posting about, and connecting with them, aka they follow you and you follow them, that more people will get exposed to the content, which will then give you the opportunity to know whether or not it's the content, if the content's working or not. I think that this is actually an audience issue at the beginning. Same thing goes with people that like companies will go and, you know, spend a ton of money and a ton of time to make a case study and put it on their website that nobody finds, and post it on LinkedIn where they have 13 followers, nobody sees, and they'll make a Facebook story about it that gets 4 views. And you might as well have not made the content because there was no audience to even consume it. And so you got to start to build an initial audience. At the same time, you should continue to put out content regardless of how many likes you get, because it's a habit, right? I've been doing this organically for 5 or 6 years under different brands, whether it was one of the e-commerce companies that I had, whether it was for the medical device company that I worked for, or now for like me. And it takes a lot of effort and knowledge to be able to produce content once a day that's valuable. And so that's something that I think you should just start building that muscle anyway, regardless of the engagement. And then once more people are seeing it, let's say that you get to a place where there's, you know, 300 views on it, then you need to figure out how many people out of the 300 liked it. If it was 1, then again, you have to use a qualitative assessment of is this an audience issue or is this a content issue, and keep working through that. And if you're going to get to a point where you're going to know whether it's the content, and then you need to think about, is it my writing style or is it the topic? One of the things that I did at the beginning is I was way more detailed and tactical. So I would write like heavy how-tos on like Facebook or LinkedIn ads that didn't get a lot of engagement because a lot of people don't care. And so I recognized that pretty quickly. Hey, when I'm going super narrow, not a lot of people are liking this stuff. I need to talk about, there needs to be a how, people need to have it be actionable, but maybe I need to open it up a little bit. And I also need to talk about the why. And as I started moving back to the why, the business rationale, and then actionable how, it started to work a lot better. And so there's probably just some like tweaks you need to do, but I think it's build audience first, get to a place where your posts are getting a minimum 1,000 views, and then start to make assessments on the content.
Okay, thanks. That was helpful. And I mean, just to give you like an idea of the sort of qualitative and semi-quantitative work I did before even starting posting was I had my data scientist go into LinkedIn and I gave him like a list of like top 15 people that I like their content and it's like relevant to my niche. And I had us do like kind of like and natural language processing analysis of like 50 of their posts to see, you know, what was like the sentiment, the comments, the type of post. Was it video? Was it text? And like, I have this whole like strategy mapped out, and it's just like falling flat on my face. And I'm just like, what's happening? So it's connections. That's it.
That is most likely something. And then like the data side may be leading you to a place that might not be authentic to you, might not be, you know what I mean? Like it could be, I've watched people that get misled by data all the time. It's happened to me too. And so there's potentially some things there where you want to zoom out and get qualitative information, right? So when I was getting ready to start posting on LinkedIn, I was also out there talking to people. And when I said things, they're like, oh, that, like what you said about attribution at the beginning, they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. So I had eliminated the idea that it's not the message. Like the message resonates. I just need to get more people to see it. And then I continue to optimize from there. So you might want to figure out how you can sort of get the confidence in the message qualitatively, one-on-one or something like that, so that you eliminate that variable from the equation too.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Cool. Good to see you.
Same.
Great question. Thanks for coming on. All right, we're going to close out here, Chris. I know you've been talking a lot. I jotted down a couple reflections from your talk. I can close us out unless you have something top of mind that you want to wrap us up with.
You can close us out. I just want to do a poll at the end.
Oh, exciting.
You want me to do it now?
Let's do the poll. Yeah.
Okay. Let
I'm
me
curious.
So I just, in terms of not necessarily the content, but in the format, if people could drop qualitative feedback into the chat, like it was me talking for an extended period of time. Is that something that we should do occasionally? We should do more often, that we should never do again? So, and then just like with the emojis or just in person, like thumbs up from a visual standpoint, if you thought that it was good, that'd be helpful.
We got a lot of great feedback while you were going through your talk, that people loved hearing the stories about your experience. People loved that you shared some of your mistakes and you weren't afraid to get vulnerable.
Okay.
Mentioning, like, recapping some of the actionable takeaways.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. It's part of the listening.
Ratio was great this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Tactical.
Talking for a long time is risky.
Yeah, I heard that one loud and clear. Usually I can read the room at this point, so I know if I'm off track. But okay, close us out, Megan. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
No, I thought your talk was great, and the couple of points that I had, I think you took us through so many different stories and so many different specific examples, but it was so funny how I think, like, everything kind of came back to like 3 core things. I could tie all of your takeaways to 3 core things. And so one, I think, was really all around people and empathy, right? So whether it's your customer, whether it's your, colleagues on the sales team, it's like really understanding the people that are involved and taking the time to really understand where they're coming from and adjust your strategy accordingly. Then another key theme was identifying the biggest problems in the business. Regardless of your role, regardless of your function. This is also how I went to head of account management to COO in 2 years at a company. I started working on problems that were outside of account management that affected my team, right? And then the CEO was noticing, oh, this person can solve problems. We have other problems to solve. I'm going to give her more problems and more responsibility, right? And so don't be afraid to step on toes. Don't be afraid to go out of the scope of your job description. If you actually are moving the needle for the business will reward you for that effort. And whatever, you might ruffle a few feathers along the way, but that's the point of all this.
Inevitable.
Right? Inevitable. And I think the last piece of it was really thinking big picture. And so it's so easy to get caught up in your day-to-day and in a tactic, in a problem, in a strategy. And so many of your examples, I think, were taking a point to, like, look at the bigger picture, whether it was through data, whether it was through a customer interaction in a sales call, whether it was, all of these other examples you provided. And so it's like, take a step back, create time and space to evaluate the situation that you're in so that you can see the things that other people are not seeing, and that you can connect the dots in a way that others are not connecting them. There are a million opportunities around, but the people that see them are the ones that take the time and the space to step back and are self-aware that there's something around them. They need to use their intuition and their intelligence to find those things and then action on them. So it was funny how I could, like, map back most of what you said to, like, those top 3 things. And so just thought it would be a fun, quick recap of the great stories that you shared with us tonight, Chris.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for joining this special event. Hope to see you back here next Tuesday.
Have a good week, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.